How would you feel if something was taken from you? If your identity was being erased? Here I'm trying to delve into the feelings of the people behind this story, to see what people from Hyderabad feel about their own city. How do you feel when people, specifically politicians, who are not from the city, who don't represent the people of Hyderabad, make comments on the way the city should be, how it operates, and what its name is?
I feel like saying get lost. There's one uniqueness, there's one identity associated with the name. Tomorrow, if somebody tells you that, just suppose people who lived in London, tomorrow people are going to say, okay, we're going to change London's name to Spain. Then how will they feel? The same way.
From your own experience, would you say Hyderabad is a multicultural place? If so, what sort of influences do you see? Where do you see them and where are they from?
A lot of it is the Mughal influence, the Persian influence, most of all in the food and language.
Is it something that you're proud of because it's so unique, or do
Yes, very, very food, language, and attitude also. Unfortunately, attitude.
what do you mean by attitude?
Everything is easygoing, getting up late, and the word pursue. The word pursue means day after tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow never comes.
And this is a word that's specifically used in the city?
Yeah. Like if you tell them, kab aayenge? Like you want the carpenter to come and do some work, right? कब आएंगे? परसों आ जाएंगे, परसों आ जाएंगे, परसों आके कर लेंगे. But that parsoon will never come. Parsoon doesn't mean actually day after tomorrow. For them, parsoon never comes. Parsoon is an indefinite day after tomorrow.
Do you feel supported by your city?
In all ways.
that have given birth to the ideology of saffronization. So, how saffronization as an ideology was born in India? And for that, we have to go back to the colonial times, because the and to the operational perspectives of RSS, Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh, because the BJP was obviously not there during the colonial times, but RSS, if we look at their history, they played a pioneering role in India's independent movements. But when they were, shaping their movements, conceptualizing their movements, it was very much structured on the communal lines. So to put it out very bluntly, basically they wanted to establish this anti-colonial movement as a Hindu movement, as to project how the Hindus, especially and obviously the high caste Hindus, hold a lot of power and prowess against the British. And this fraction obviously goes back to the times of anti-Islamic psyches, anti-Islamic perspectives that were very much rooted in the Indian society and culture post the Islamic invasion, the kind of the destruction of the Hindu temples, the destruction of Hindu cultures were also caused by many Islamic leaders across different points of time, which is obviously a history we can't deny. But then this sort of anti-Islamic rootedness dates back to the times of the RSS operations at the time of British colonization, and then it sort of got carried forward with post-colonial India, when Congress, again a political party, a political ideology, which is a sort of, in a lot of ways, a recycled version of European ideologies and European perspectives in India, where they talked about blending the Western education with traditional education, rapid industrialization, elitizing Indian societies, or internationalizing Indian societies. And then, which actually the process that it followed was a lot of a replication of the colonial ideologies of fractures and fragments, and which for a long period of time did not sit well with the Indian society in general. So in 2014, previously BJP had its own short spells of leadership in India, but jumping now directly to 2014, we have to see that the narratives, the perspectives, if we see, let's say when we, one of the interesting aspects when BJP came to power, when they were doing these pre-election campaigns, a very interesting keyword that they used to generate vote banks was decolonization. This was the first time when decolonization within the Indian discourse framework, it became a public word. Prior to that, obviously, decolonization was very much restricted within classroom theories, within conference theories, within very elite, guarded, four-walled academic locations. But this is the first time when decolonization came into the public space, that where we need to revive back what was Indian. We need to revive back the golden age of glory. We need to get into, we need to revive everything that was traditionally Indian. Now, how are they interpreting the concepts, all of these perspectives? What is traditionally Indian? What is the past, glorious past of India? They are very problematic. If decolonization is coming to the public forum, then it's something very positive. But what is happening under the BJP regime is a very distorted, fictionalized, and extremely propagandist version of decolonization that they have fleshed out into the space. In fact, they are using this word, the keyword decolonization, as a way, as a form of blanket to hide their real intentions of converting India, or this vision of converting India into a high caste Hindu fundamentalist nation. And that is what gets reflected through all of their policies. I can we can just go along for for hours and hours, but just to sort of make it more comprehensive, I'll give you a few practical examples. For instance, if you see organizations like ICSSR or UGC, what kind of university projects they are funding. Every freaking project you will see, they have this key term called Vikshit Bharat. Every project, no matter whatever it is, it's in the sciences, it's in the humanities, it is in the social sciences or management or whatever disciplines. Every discipline now they are using this term Vikshit Bharat. Now, Vikshit Bharat is if you look at the concept, what are the parameters of understanding Vikshit Bharat? The parameters of understanding Vikshit Bharat is obviously those policies, perspectives, visions that are core to the propaganda of the right-wing BJP party. If those propaganda are being promoted and appreciated without any criticism, then those are the projects that are getting foremost importance. And any kind of project, any kind of perspective that doesn't promote Vikshit Bharat, on the contrary, is trying to critique how the BJP is operating, then they are silently flushed out. Now you see the systematization. Now this is what all, blends together to form the dynamic of saffronization. Now we know how the color saffron is associated in general with Hinduism, with Hindu gods and goddesses. But then there is a dynamic of the narrative of muscularity that has come up with spirituality, where you see this larger than life images of the BJP political leaders being put out in public spaces. Sometimes some BJP leaders would be compared to Ram, and some BJP leaders would be compared to Hanuman, and all of these muscular bodied deities that we have grown up with. They are being equated with the godliness of the BJP leaders. And this has been happening across India before elections. If we have been in India at that point of time, any part of India, we have surely at least come across with one sort of images of the other. Now, this is, again, a very complex intersectional perspective that BJP is using, where the color saffron is not just used or implemented here as a color, as a spiritual color, but also is being imbibed and inherited as a political color, as a color of representation, as a color of politicization, and most importantly, as a color of branding. So if you're understanding saffronization of public knowledge in India, it's also a form of branding. When we are using the same keyword, like for instance, you're writing research paper, okay? You write 10 research papers with saffronization or 20 research papers with saffronization, then obviously, Vishu Reddy writes against saffronization. So, that sort of tagging or labeling. And that is also a part of branding, right? And that is BJP has been doing this very wisely. So if we have to understand, though I have talked about saffronization of public knowledge from an academic perspective, from the daily conversational perspective, but these things also can be brought into the conversation. So if you see the whole evolutionary history and the intentions of applying the narrative of saffronization, you see the inherent problems that are hiding here and there. And this is why I believe on my end that saffronization of public knowledge, we are not just coloring in terms of the visual color. We are ideologically coloring, we are culturally coloring, we are intellectually coloring our knowledge systems in daily life. And anything that, any kind of knowledge that doesn't suit into that coloring parameter or coloring framework is immediately rejected. And this is why we see this whole process of erasing certain selective portions of Hindu histories and Muslim histories from the textbooks. Recently, sort of the heroization of the present BJP leaders as kind of historical figures. Like, for instance, recently, there was this controversy that came up in the newspaper where I think it's in Gujarat or Rajasthan, where they proposed that the students in the school, they should read about the life histories of Amit Shah, because recently, like NCRT has proposed, in fact, the government has proposed with this sort of framework that Amit Shah is such a popular figure in India and across the world because of his leadership. So people should read great leaders like this. So these sort of activities, when you try to decode the different factors that why these kind of thought processes are becoming normal, why these kind of proposals are coming up. It is not just a casual process. It's not just they one day they wake up and they just feel like I have no work, so let me propose the name of Amit Shah for studies. No, it has been happening for a long time. This heroization of certain figures, obviously, if they're worth reading, why not? But then we also know the other side of the reality, the intentions why they are being proposed. Because when you bring in a historical, let's say there is a history book on the history of Amit Shah's power or the biography of Amit Shah, and we are including it as a part of, let's say, we are teaching a module on historical biographies. I'm just taking a random example, and where we all study Amit Shah's biography. Now we are doing it at the cost of erasing somebody, and that erasure is also politically constructed, where a certain figure who doesn't fit within the BJP's ideological paradigm will be smoothly and silently and subtly erased from the curriculum, and that will be replaced by Amit Shah. So this is not just a random proposal. These are just one of the many designs that BJP has conjured over time in order to establish a pan-Indian framework of saffronization. In fact, it's not just pan-Indian, I would say. It is with the assistance of right-wing NRI support, it is now gradually becoming pan-global. I think I'll stop there.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Also, I didn't even know about the Amit Shah thing. To me, that's so crazy. It's hard to fathom the inclusion of current political leaders who are within the current political hegemony in India being included into history. But I kind of wanted to also ask, how did you get, what made you write this academic article about the topic? Was it something that you were seeing become gradually more prevalent in your daily life, or was it what you were seeing on the news, or was it what you were just hearing about within the academic space?
Great question, and I think there are multiple reasons, but two major reasons that I wish to flag off is anger and frustration. Anger and frustration, obviously, with a lot with personal experiences, because if you read this article, probably if you try to read between the lines, you will find me I'm writing it a lot of rage, a lot of anger. And the reason is obviously not listening to stories, I mean, endless stories of hatred and rumors being used as tools by the BJP ministers to destroy communities, selective communities, and societies are obviously there. But at a very personal level, when I grew up with a certain kind of culture where we never had any sort of Islamophobic feeling, where we never grew up with this sort of narrative that is a Muslim locality, that is a Hindu locality, you shouldn't go to the Muslim households or you shouldn't go to the Christian households, etc. Now, when we see that this sort of narrative is becoming so normative within our daily life existential spaces, including my own, that becomes very difficult to fathom. And we know that, even if there are certain locations, and one thing I always have felt very strongly is maybe every locality where I stayed in terms of my work or residency may not be a BJP ruled area. But the thing is, their ideologies are toxic and infectious. even if it is not a BJP ruled area, you see somewhere that they have so subtly, um, injected those ideologies across spaces, locations, and mindsets that they sort of get normatively reflected around us. In my very local spaces, I could see how people who never behaved in a certain way started behaving very awkwardly, who would never ever spew narratives of hatred against certain communities and certain societies, all of us suddenly have changed and is sort of abusing certain communities and certain societies. So, and these are happening. I mean, I'm keeping every theories, every sort of methodologies aside, and I'm giving you examples like from my very basic experiential spaces. And also, in fact, I must say, and I always say this, that like one of the many reasons why I have left India recently last year and I have relocated to a place outside my country is one of the many reasons is this frustration, because we see this happening across academic spaces. They're inviting leaders just for the sake of their own accreditation and promotion and advertisements and marketing. They're inviting leaders whose leaderships are deep down publicly questioned, who have been charged with multiple sort of antisocial activities. They are being invited in a university space to address generations of people in for leadership, for academics, for research. Just imagine. And I as a worker, I'm being a part of this space, I'm compelled to attend those events, and at the end of the day, I am compelled to applaud, give rounds of applause for something which I don't appreciate to. So the kind of conformism I was forced into also deeply contributed for sure to end up writing this article. And in fact, I mean, this is probably the first article where I voice out saffronization so loudly. But I also must say for sure something, and that is where I have talked quite a lot of in other places about Islamophobia in terms of food, Islamophobia in terms of in the context of COVID, like when we saw this COVID jihad and all of these hashtags coming up at the time of COVID outbreak. And we need to see that, we need to trace that lineage, the lineage of hatred, or the lineage of accumulating hatred across different spaces and time that has happened needs to be taken into account if we are critiquing saffronization in the contemporary times.
For sure. I can relate a lot with your personal experience. Especially growing up in Hyderabad, it's also not BJP dominated, but somehow like the same type of rhetoric still comes like within the city, and you do start to see like individuals subscribing to this ideology that never subscribed to it before, using terms they never used before because they're learning it from somewhere or they're getting the info from somewhere. And of course, like, as someone studying journalism, I'm always trying to do my part in the family by saying that's fake. Like you saw it, like you can't believe everything that you see on WhatsApp. But it's hard when things can get so bad that I have to start I have to start telling people, oh, I know you're watching the news, but even the news now is saying things that are slightly distorted depending on the station that you watch. Republic TV, to give an example. But I can relate to that experience a lot. And especially because, like, in the recent elections for Hyderabad, BJP gained more of a foothold in the district that encompasses most of, like, the central city of Hyderabad. So a lot of people who are a part of like the upper class, a BJP MLA was nominated. And Hyderabad has its like own like state party, which like dwindled in power, and has basically no power anymore. the BRS. But I kind of wanted to like now touch upon that. I personally have seen a lot of educated, like this is what it's hard to grapple with. There are people who are educated, who are of the upper class in India, who are spreading this ideology and subscribing to it. And then you also have highly educated NRIs who are not within India, who are also supporting the same rhetoric from outside the country, which I always found very interesting, because honestly, the most fervent supporters of the BJP in my personal life have been highly educated upper class Hindus from both within and outside of India. I was wondering if you had any context or notion as to why.
I think this is a very interesting question. And as you were sharing the question, I was thinking, I think one rooted cause of this is to sort of tickle the sentiments of nationalism now, and patriotism. Now, you will see one thing, and I think it's a very common observation for me. And since you have been, I believe, staying there for quite a few years in the United States, and I believe you have been to other parts of the world as well. The people, when they are outside India, when they're staying within their communities, you see their consciousness, you will closely observe this, their consciousness towards celebrating or representing Indianness is way more than what they would do back in India. So if you look at the kind of dedication that they show in order to celebrate Diwali or Navratri or whatever it is, like Dandiya or these sort of very core, popular, globally popular Hindu-centric festivals, they are very much tied to this sort of patriotism. And usually, if you just enter into those basic, like daily conversational spaces, one common narrative that floats around and what motivates them to, celebrate them with so much of enthusiasm is that we are outside India. So it is essential for us to, maintain our cultural roots. So the urge to maintain the cultural roots is always way more ahead within the migrant community than the people back in the country. Because back in the country, you are within your country. You are in your comfort zone. So you really, every day you won't grapple with this tension, whether I would be able to maintain my cultural roots or not. But outside India, yes, we do grapple with this tension. And if you see the historical element, obviously, it's not easy to be a migrant, whether you are a millennial, whether you are a middle class, whether you are a lower middle class, whatever you are, it's not easy to be a migrant anywhere in any part of the world. Because there would be moments of time where you are made to feel that you are not one of us, whether it's in your workspace, in your learning space, in your community space, that you're not one of us. No matter how much we smile, no matter how much we greet you, no matter how much on the surface we say that you are very welcome, we are always there for you, somewhere, somewhat you will see the dividends. And those dividends are not just because randomly you are just a migrant, but also those dividends because of your skin color, of your hair texture, of your fashion sense, of your South, of your labeling that you are from the global South, or you are from South Asia. Okay, you are that sort of labeling. Maybe it is not so physically visible, but then, you sense that. You sense that labeling in silence. And that makes you somewhere somewhat more closely tied, or that urge to get closely tied to your own communities, your own societies, or widely with your country. And these sort of emotions, usually people may not express them, may or may not express them in public spaces so openly, but somewhere deep down, in the deep rooted consciousness, it's there. Now, Modi, we have to understand that the BJP operates We see Narendra Modi, Amit Shah, or all of these big shot leaders on the forefront. But they're just the faces. The operation takes place at the back door, where you have a full-fledged IT team, a research team, a multimedia team, a management team, a branding team, sitting behind closed doors, getting highly paid, have got top-notch qualifications from Ivy League and Russell League universities, and are being recruited extremely high salaries to consistently research and find out how they can expand their tentacles across the world. And one of the many things that they successfully did was to make this brought out into the forefront and tickle down this patriotic, to bring this patriotism, nationalistic feelings that have remained submerged, subdued, widely obviously out of fear, out of shame, because you're also often as a migrant made to feel shameful of your own culture, of your own traditions, of your own languages, of your own lifestyles, to bring to the forefront. And that is why, the acceptance of Modi within India and across the world, one of the many things that makes Modi so appealing is his fearless identity. Today, he goes across the world and he speaks in Hindi. This thing has to be taken into consideration. I think just yesterday, like today in the morning, I was reading that, and it became a news apparently, that's a European actor, while receiving the award on the stage, said something in Hindi, right?
Oh,
You see,
yeah.
these things become news. These things become news. Prior to Modi, it never happened. Now with Modi's impact across the world, where white people are speaking in the Indian language. We are not going around and speaking in English. Modi is going around and speaking in Hindi. Now his words are getting translated into the respective languages. That is where the patriotism and the rootedness comes from. Obviously, when we look at the wider diaspora or the migrant community, it is not only the Hindi-speaking communities who are there. There's a massive historically Malayalam-speaking community, Telugu-speaking community, Tamil-speaking community who have been migrating for centuries, even prior to the arrival of the European colonizers, for the sake of trade, commerce, education. Okay, and so but what we see is, in general, what is happening outside India, there is this element of collective patriotism, this element of collective nationalism that was always there within the people. People might have felt afraid or ashamed. That is what Modi is giving, this sort of vibe that now you can be open and proud of your own nationality even in a foreign land. And that is happening with policies, that is happening with speeches, that is happening with commercial exchanges, that is happening with the concept of Vikshit Bharat, Virat Bharat, Global India campaign, etc. Bringing the world to India, Make in India campaign, and all of these things. And we have to understand that a lot of these investments, the monetary financial investments, are coming all from majorly, not all, but majorly for sure from the NRIs, the super rich NRI communities. Then reviving temples or building temples in locations where there were no temples at all. And obviously, we know that there are, like, in general, Indians, especially Hindu Indians, can be manipulated to the nth extent with one major thing, is to make them emotional with religion. And that is another massive tool that Modi is using and the BJP is using to actually capture the NRI support. So, as I said to you, that there are multiple factors, but these two, like this patriotism and nationalism and religion, the intersection, it functions like a triumvirate when we look at how and why, as we are pointing out, that the educated of the educated people are supporting Modi. And if you look at their profession, you will see majority of them are businessmen. Majority of them are businessmen. If you look at after the arrival of Modi, across the very top-notch universities of the world where they didn't have ever a center for Hindu studies, they are opening up center for Hindu studies, and then obviously sponsorships for chair professors and chair directors and all of these things. And who are the sponsors? They are the businessmen, they are the NRIs who have always silently and suavely supported the right wing propaganda. Because honestly, without supporting the right wing propaganda, capitalism cannot flourish. So obviously now we have to see the connection with capitalism as well. And it can go on and on. Like we can see multiple dots can join. But I'll stop here. And I think this triumvirate needs to be taken into consideration very deeply.
So with specifically like, because I was interviewing like just not academics but normal people, a lot of them in Hyderabad because that's where I'm from, and a lot of people talked about how the BJP was trying to change its name despite not even having power in the constituency, but I was trying to explain this sort of concept to my like classmate who's not Indian, and like say like, oh, they're trying to change the name of the city that I'm from, but I was kind of met with oh, like that's weird, but is that so big of a deal? Like that's strange, but what would why would this be bad? So I think like something like the changing of a name can represent bigger things like the erasing of history, but I was kind of wondering, in your perspective, what do you think the government is trying to accomplish using these techniques of like changing things in like the CBSE history textbooks, changing names? Like what is like their end goal with these like things that people may think don't really matter but all add up?
Yes, I think to understand this, we have to understand BJP's politics of sanitization, ideological sanitization, and intellectual sanitization. Now, because at the end, what BJP aspires, what RSS aspires, and what other right-wing groups and subgroups in India aspires, and also I believe across the world, like Trump aspires to make US a Christian fundamental state. That's his ultimate aspiration, a white, heteronormative Christian fundamental state. On a similar note, this is what BJP aspires in India, to make it an absolute Hindu fundamental state. And for that, one has to undergo these techniques where, Prayagraj, right? The station Prayagraj, the city Prayagraj, the station Prayagraj. Then Mughal Sarai station becomes Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyaya station, right? And and they have endlessly, now recently they are even planning to change the name of Taj Mahal as well, right? So something Hindu name. So, these requires a lot of sanitation. Then, as we have already talked about, erasures in textbooks. And then you also see when it comes to the question of removing names or replacing names, they have done that already within the parliament. The new parliament building has come up. You must have read about that now the people and the images and the ideas and the kind of constructions the halls have made, the way they have changed the names of the halls and the rooms or whatever they have put it out. It is again this whole element of sanitization also comes with the whole politics of keywording. Like you are peppering your surroundings with words, because when you put down the words, you consistently feed the people with ideologies as well. Just imagine 50 years, 100 years from now on, there would be a time when people probably would never ever read that there was a place called Allahabad. Okay, it was always Prayagraj. Okay, now when you don't read the name of Allahabad, it's not just you erase a name, you erase a whole archive of narrative that was associated with it. You erase a whole historical, cultural, ideological archive with that, which is exactly what they're looking for. So let's imagine if India becomes a Hindu fundamental state. For example, Mapila rebellion have been completely erased from the textbooks. So we people know it has been erased because we read about it, we have those narratives with us, and now we are part of that time which is transitioning into something else. So we know it. Just imagine 100 years, 120 years, 200 years after, if these sort of histories, if we don't stop, or if we fail to revive these, if we fail to dismantle these sanitized narratives, people will never know if there was anything about Mapila rebellion, or if there was a Mughal Maratha war, or if there was a Taj Mahal, or if there was a Mughal Sarai station, right? Because when these names were set, when these names were established, obviously it had a historical background behind that. So the whole narrative is getting erased. The whole package of narrative is getting erased. And this is obviously essential. Like, for instance, if you go to the UK, I give you different other examples. If you go to UK, if you go to the schools, if you look at their school curriculums, they are not taught about racism. They are not taught about colonialism. They are not taught about British colonization. They don't even know about that. Just imagine a history which is globally known. If you are meeting students who are venturing out of the country for the first time, and they're coming into these sort of global south spaces, they're coming without a knowledge of that. How surprising is this? The same thing is happening right now in Bangladesh as well. With the new government, they are changing every names, that has to do with the previous government. Like the previous government, Sheikh Hasina's father was Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and they have this university like Mujibur University. The name is changed now. It has a very local name. They have replaced them. The names of the buildings, the names of the streets that were associated with the previous government, or the leaders or the leaderships of the previous government, have been completely removed. So it is not surprising at all, because it has always happened historically. Now we are seeing this happening in India. It is giving us a lot of shock, because probably from the generation to where we began, we haven't seen that happening, right? So now we are seeing that, and we can feel the tension, we can feel the fractions of its impact, getting a first-hand experience, and that is what is making us unsettled.
Yeah, completely. This will be the last question, by the way. I'm sorry that it's gone like a little bit over.
No worries.
But I wanted to ask, why is this dangerous? Like, why should the public care? Because sometimes when you try to tell people that all this is happening, I'm met with the response, like when I talk to people who are also Hindu, I'm met with this response of, so why is that a bad thing? Or why does that matter? So why is this dangerous, and how does this negatively affect the Indian public?
I think it's a very essential question, and there are many ways in which it affects, but I would like to highlight again one very specific point. And that is, with sanitization comes intellectual sterilization, where we are converted into living beings, where we are intellectually decapitated. We lose the capability to think, observe, and express critically. And once the aspect of critical thinking is gone, what we are left with is either different versions of absolutism. Either we are absolutely conforming with what is there, or we are absolutely rejecting what is there. And both have its extreme dangers, right? We know absolutism is deep down dangerous. And this is what is happening with the BJP regime, right? If you look at, I will give you one simple example, and with what is happening with the curriculums and pedagogies. There are universities right now I can say from the private university perspective, because I have worked so far across India only in private institutions. And I know my friends are there in public universities and they are encountering the same thing, where you are regularly surveilled and censored of what you are bringing in your lunchbox, what you are teaching in your classroom. Are you saying something which goes against the parameters of right-wing propaganda? Are you bringing certain kind of meat or certain kind of non-vegetarian items which actually, according to the benchmark of puritanism and ethics and morality of the BJP, it doesn't fit in? And I won't take the name of the university, but I also know the name of the university, which is basically located in Noida. They regularly check the different boxes of their faculties to see if they are bringing non-vegetarian foods on certain occasions. So this is the level of policing that you have. Now, there are two major things that can happen. Either you get frustrated, freaked out, and you respond back. And obviously for that, you get penalized, heavily penalized. You may lose your job. You will not get your salary. In the worst case, you may land up in the prison. Or else you conform. You conform out of choice because you feel that's great. Or you conform out of compulsion because you have no other option to escape from that space. But at the end of the day, whatever we do, if we are conforming, we are also sterilizing ourselves. Now, I'll give you another very interesting example. Recently, what is the name of Jamia Millia Islamia. They had got a new VC. Now, you might be knowing that in universities like Aligarh Muslim University or Jamia Millia Islamia University, they are very Muslim-centric in nature. Like Banaras Hindu University is so Hindu-centric in nature. So, they will never have a non-Muslim VC, at the top. They will always have a Muslim VC. But if you look at the way the VC of Jamia Millia is functioning, and which has recently created so much of furore and so much of resistance and protest, he is exactly replicating the dictatorial policies as we see in case of the BJP government. And that is where is the danger of sterilization. And that is where we should be worried. Now you see, till now, it's like, okay, it's Hindus against the Muslims, high caste Hindus against the Muslims. But this is a Muslim guy who is not behaving anything different from a BJP cadre, who is not behaving anything different from the Hindu maniac BJP leader. Now, what are you going to say in this case? And that is where the dangers of sanitization, the dangers of ideological and intellectual sanitization lies. And today you see across, this problem is across social media spaces. The moment you raise your voice against the right-wing propagandism in India or any other parts of the world, we are talking in the context of India. So if you're raising this voice, people are going to tear you apart without a second thought. And why this sort of uncritical? Okay, fine, you can be a BJP supporter. I can be an anti-BJP person. Still, we can sit here, have our own logic, have our own logical reasoning. We can have multiple points of disagreement. Still, we can sit here and interact and talk. We don't have to dismiss each other. We don't have to abuse each other. We don't have to personally hate each other. But we only end up doing that when our critical functionality is completely sterilized. When we lose our critical functionality. And when do we lose our critical functionality or the power to think, act critically is when we are intellectually sterilized. And all of these processes of sanitation, saffronization, pseudo-patriotism, pseudo-sciences, and we can keep going on and adding on to the list have deeply contributed to this state. And this is why, as public, we need to be aware. What are we thinking? How are we thinking? Because the damage that has already been done and the damage that is already happening is not just going to be restricted within this particular time frame. It will dissipate across generations. So when we are damaging, we are not just damaging the present generation. We are damaging another few centuries of generation as well. And will our future generation be able to deal with that sort of damage is an essential question. And that question itself must bother us, must unsettle us, and must make us aware.
Yeah, thank you so much. I relate to a lot of the sentiments that you've expressed. I think it's really hard to it's really hard to talk about things like this. So I really commend like the efforts of you, like personally and academically, for talking about how the current government in power, the BJP, has been abusing its power, and they making India in a place where authoritarianism thrives. Because I actually I have no more interview questions, but I just want to let you know that originally I was trying to investigate how the Indian government was taking away people's OCIs. Like a lot of journalists who talk about India, they were revoking their OCIs, which essentially shouldn't be something that is revocable unless you commit a crime. But people's OCIs were being canceled just for writing and speaking about India. And I was advised not to write about it because it would connect my name to as like someone whose OCI should also be revoked. And that led me down this path because I always thought that was the most egregious thing to be taking from people. A lot of people who have just lived their whole entire lives in India, but now they get kicked out or they get essentially deported or because they're reporting on what the BJP is doing unfavorably. So yeah, I really appreciate the work of Indian scholars who are willing to talk about this, because it I don't know, it really helps at least in educating, because I'm pretty young, I'm only 21, and I'm about to get my undergraduate degree in May, but it's to find these sources was also kind of hard because there's a lot of people who don't want to say anything, and I can understand the fear, but I really appreciate people like you who are willing to have conversations about this topic and express their thoughts candidly about what's going on. So thank you so much.
No, thank you so much, Vishu. Also, I must really appreciate first your courage and your interest to take up this topic. Even as you rightly mentioned, there are a lot of people who are genuinely interested to talk about this, about the aspect of saffronization and all of these perspectives. But then obviously there is an inherent fear, and we understand the reason for fear, right? We cannot blame them. It's difficult to talk, and obviously, I can't deny that at points of time I do feel precarious about talking, but then I think someone needs to put it out loud and direct. We also cannot just sit silent anymore, because we are all getting affected, whether we are talking, we are not talking, we are all getting impacted in negative ways. So a young scholar like you has that courage to take up this research is really interesting. And I think I deeply, congratulate you for that, and I wish you the best. And if you really need any sort of any assistance in the future, feel free to approach me as well. In fact, I will just put my WhatsApp here, so that any point of time you feel like quickly contacting me, just feel free to do that. Not a problem.
Thank you so much.
No worries.
Okay, let me just note. Okay. Yeah. Okay, just quickly wanted to note that down. But yeah, thank you so much. I know I used up quite a bit of your time here.
No.
So yeah.
it was a brilliant conversation, so I enjoyed every bit of it. So no worries with that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
Yeah, you too. Please take
Okay.
care. Stay well.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Tell me.
How would you describe, for how long have you lived in Hyderabad?
What do you mean? Like when?
For how long have you lived in Hyderabad? Like in your life?
I have to count, right? Before it was 24 years. And then from 2012 on and
Why do you live in Hyderabad?
on. Because my mom is here. And I like it. It was where I was born.
Why does your mom live there?
Because this is where she was raised. It's a beautiful city, amalgamation of culture.
So would you say that
I went to school here.
multiple generations of your family have lived there?
Yeah.
Well, how would you describe the atmosphere of the city growing up?
Tolerance to religion, amalgamation of cultures, a blend of south, east, west India.
Did you have friends who were different from you?
Yeah, some, but mostly like me.
As in, did you have friends who, I guess, were like of different backgrounds?
Yes.
Do you think Hyderabad has always been more, has been like a more privileged place? As in, like, a lot of people in it are educated or anything?
Yes.
Why do you, can you sound like not, you sound like you're on the verge of tears a little bit.
No, I'm not.
I know, but like, that's what you sound like. It sounds like I'm holding you hostage to do this.
No, not at all.
Where did you live growing up?
Himayatnagar.
Is that an older or newer part of the city?
Not old, not new. No, it wasn't old city, but it's not a newer part of the city also. It was an old, not like the old city, like not Charminar, all that also, but it's not like Gachibowli or Jubilee Hills or.
Hyderabad has a pretty interesting population makeup compared to the rest of India.
Yes.
There's a lot of minorities in India that are present in Hyderabad, like all at once. And there's also a lot of people that immigrate to Hyderabad because it's a metropolitan city.
Yes.
Do you think this is because of Hyderabad's tolerance, or did it cause Hyderabad to be tolerant?
So I had like friends from all over North India, but they made this home, and this is where they were raised. Until today, when they've all moved back to Delhi now, but whenever I go to Delhi, our whole Hyderabad group gets together. And they say that Hyderabad is their home, though their parents were born and brought up in Delhi and Agra and Uttar Pradesh, but they moved to Hyderabad for their jobs. And then my generation kids went to school in Hyderabad and they associate only with Hyderabad. The tailor will say, परसों दे देंगे अम्मा कपड़े परसों दे देंगे. But before I became an American citizen and I got used to totally American lifestyle, and every time I would come to India, even the smell of the ground in Hyderabad, I would wait for. I'd get out of the flight, and when the door would open, I would smell the ground first.
What do you think it smelled like?
No, just something was my Hyderabad. But down the line, it changed because I became American.
Did you call Hyderabad when you were younger too?
Yeah.
Do you have any nicknames for the city?
No.
Okay. Would you describe it as one of your homes?
Yes.
Did you ever consider moving anywhere else in India?
No.
You say that so like you're so sure. How are you so sure?
This is where I was born and raised. I identify with its culture, with its language.
A lot of people may hear you say that and
It
be like,
runs in my blood. It runs in my blood. With its food. In fact, when I always say when I go to old city, when the true me comes out, right?
the true you being a bargainer.
The bargainer, the way I talk to those people, the way I identify with those people. In fact, there's a video of me made. Those Rotarians made a video of me. I can get that video if you want.
Yeah, I'd want to see it.
You want to see it? I'll get it.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm curious, like, because a lot of people will hear you say, oh, it's my language, and they'll wonder why you say that because in Hyderabad, people speak Hindi, and a lot of India speaks Hindi. So what would be unique about that?
No, it's totally different, right? The true me came out that day and they were all fascinated.
But like to people who don't know, right? They'd be like, "Oh, in Hyderabad people speak Hindi, so how is the language unique? Everyone in India speaks Hindi." Like what would you like how would you explain to them how it's different?
It's a different dialect, it's a different slang. It's a mixture of Urdu and Hindi and it's very poetic. And it's very affectionate.
More so than like just like normal spoken Hindi?
Oh, yes.
When you say more poetic, does that do you
There's one thing of affection that comes out in it.
and do you think that speaks to the culture of the city? Do you think people from Hyderabad are more affectionate?
Yes. There's one because one formality goes away.
What's the most, if I asked you to say like the most typical thing Hyderabadi person could say, what would you say? You can say it in Hindi too, or Telugu or whatever.
क्या कर रहे मियाँ?
What happened?
No, what are you doing?
And if somebody would probably not know, right? They'd ask like, oh, doesn't everyone ask what you're doing? Why is that the most Hyderabad thing you could say?
Huh?
Somebody who's not from Hyderabad will probably hear you say that and then wonder, oh, why is that the most Hyderabad thing you can say? We all ask what everyone else is doing.
No, but it has so many different meanings.
What are some of them?
क्या कर रहे मियाँ means not just what are you doing, but in an affectionate way. What it means in an affectionate. Mia means like the way of addressing a person. Affectionately addressing a person.
So would you would say this to friends and family?
Yeah. Not to someone older than you, but to friends.
Yeah. Okay, that's pretty much all the questions I have.
Okay. You want to send that, play that video? I will get it for you.
Yeah, that video would help and
Okay.
to explain. But yeah, because I'm asking, obviously